Real Estate Academy. Well, the MLSPIN is out with a blistering legal brief in response to the Department of Justice. So you might remember that over the wintertime, what was that, February, I think? Or was it March? I think it was February. The Department of Justice issued a statement of interest in the Nosalek versus MLSPIN case here based in Massachusetts. And it was like, whoa, they want to completely decouple commissions. Remember that? And we've been kind of waiting, and it's been a couple of delays. I thought I'd be making this video at least in April or May, but no, now it's June 10th or 11th. We're finally making this video. So we're going to bring you through what the MLS-PIN has said in this blistering, I'm going to call it a barn burner, a wicked barn burner, as we would say here in Massachusetts, of a legal brief. And as you know, generally speaking, if you've been watching this channel, I've been, more or less on the Department of Justice side. But I got to say, some of the arguments in this MLS-PIN brief have really tugged at my heartstrings. I'm like, some of you might know that I'm a kind of a less government is better government type of guy. And I read this brief and I was like, yeah, I was like, well, maybe they got a point here. So, not being a lawyer, too smart to go to law school, I got the question the other day, what does that mean? Well, it was like, I remember sitting in the lobby of Suffolk University Law School. I worked at the State House right next door, literally right next door. And I was like, I could go here. I could continue to work at the State House, go here part-time or three-quarter time or whatever. And because I had, by that time I had the State House job kind of wrapped around my finger. I'm like, but all the lawyers I know, they're not happy. And all they do all day long is tell you why you can't get something done. And knowing who I am somebody who likes to make a list and get things done. I knew that being a lawyer wasn't for me. So that's why I'm too smart to go to law school, because I knew it wasn't for me. I want to get things done, not tell people why they can't get things done. All right. So having said that, there are many of you across the country, whether you're working in a wide variety of MLSs, right? Austin MLS, California MLS, Bright MLS, Northwest MLS, and probably a lot of other MLSs that I don't even know about, where you're probably getting guidance, Berkshire County MLS, you're probably getting guidance from your local MLS about how to do things coming up in the next month, right? August 17th is the big deadline, right? And if you're in MLS-PIN land, like I am a subscriber to MLS-PIN, but as some of you might know, I'm not a realtor, or realtor, as I like to purposely mispronounce it. I'm not a realtor, so I am an MLS-PIN subscriber, and we have gotten no guidance, nothing, radio silence. Why? Because they're in the midst of this giant lawsuit with the Department of Justice, and they don't know how it's going to come out. And we're 9 weeks from August 17th? You think we'd have some guidance if we were in a, I don't want to malign them, but if we were in a non-legal environment like we are here in MLS-PIN, we would have a lot of guidance about what to do. But we're flying blind, other than the guidance that you're getting from the National Association, which technically I'm not I do get it. Thank you. But thank you for sending it. Many of you send it. But technically I'm not a member. But what we're looking at here is a dichotomy, certainly, where we could have a situation, if MLS-PIN wins this lawsuit, that the rules here in Massachusetts end up to be different than the NAR settlement. And that wouldn't necessarily be a problem for me because I'm not a realtor. But if you're a realtor and you have to comply with the NAR settlement, but the MLS-PIN settlement is more lenient, where does that leave you? I'm kind of confused about that. That's why I was kind of hoping that we would see kind of that multi-district panel thing kind of settle this once and for all. Because if anything, as an entrepreneur, somebody who is in business, what I want are clear, understandable, and stable rules. We could argue about what those are, but I want some transparency and some stability. most of anything. And right now we don't have that at all. We don't have that at all. All right, so let's get in to the blistering brief. And by the way, I have made this brief available. You have to go on to the U.S. court system database thingy, Pacer thing, and you have to pay. It's like $3 or whatever. It wasn't that much. But it's a kind of a pain in the ass how to learn it. So if you want to read the brief, I've put a link in the description. I put it on Google Drive, and I put the link in Google Drive. So you can read it yourself if you want. You don't have to go tracing around the court system, which has got to be the most untransparent thing I've ever seen in my life. All right, so let's bring up, we're going to cover, there's a lot of points made in this brief. We're going to cover 4. Thank you so much for joining us today. We actually have a couple people joining us early on a Tuesday morning. It is a gorgeous day out. Thinking about the boat this afternoon. Could be a boat day. All right, let's take up 4 of the critical points that the MLSPIN makes in this brief, which is blistering. And it definitely has made me kind of, I'm not going to say flip-flop, but reconsider. All right, so let's get into it. Number 1, which is labeled C, just bear with me. The Department of Justice opposes the proposed settlement with policy arguments that are contrary to antitrust law. So this is just like going right for the jugular. They're basically saying, hey, you're trying to solve this. You're trying to solve this antitrust problem, and you yourself, Department of Justice, are promoting antitrust policies. They're like, this is kettle calling something, but what is that analogy? Yeah, you know the thing. You know the thing. Here's the thing. Quote, the one thing the proposed settlement does not do is implement new listing rules affirmatively banning sellers from offering compensation to buyer brokers. To do so would trip an antitrust violation according to the Supreme Court precedent. MLSPIN cannot enter into an agreement to prohibit free market compensation offers. Tugging at my less government is better government heartstring right there. Between private actors in the real estate industry. See part 3 of this brief, which actually we're going to do. We're going to really be looking at part 3, letter D, later on. But effectively, they're saying is that, hey, in a free market economy, you can't be telling people in curtailing their First Amendment rights. Very compelling argument as far as I'm concerned. Let's go on to the second point of this brief, of this blistering brief. Both MLSPIN and home sellers have the right to publish free market compensation under the First Amendment. The DOJ's policy argument that the proposed settlement is not fair and reasonable unless it affirmatively bans free market compensation offers should be rejected for the additional reason that communication it seeks to prohibit is protected under the First Amendment. So, yeah, like we're not talking about some small little thing. We're talking about the First Amendment, which is actually something that I referred to when we were talking about seller concessions about 2 weeks ago, right? How can you ban the seller, not the brokerage, but the seller? How can you ban the seller from saying, hey, I'm willing to pay, right? That's not fire in a movie theater. That's just saying I'm willing to pay. Crucially, the Department of Justice never denies that sellers can compensate buyer brokers in the free market. I would have to admit here a little bit of an irony that the Biden administration is promoting the free market as the solution. Just a little editorial on my behalf. To the contrary, the department confirms the legitimacy of that practice and instead seeks only to ban sellers and their brokers from transmitting compensation offers. This is a textbook regulation of speech akin to the advertising ban struck down in some other case that we don't have to worry about. We're not going to go into that case. if the First Amendment means anything, it means that regulating speech must be a last, not first resort. Thompson versus Western States Medical or something like that. Doesn't court. We're not lawyers. Who cares? But the principle is the same, right? It should be the last resort regulating free speech. Thank you so much for joining us, by the way. I see we have a good audience this morning. Happy Tuesday. It's early on Tuesday. What time is it on Tuesday? It is 8:54 on the Eastern Seaboard, shaping up to be a beautiful day. In fact, a beautiful stretch of weather. All right, let's get on to point number 3. Point number 3, bring it up here. The Department of Justice's ban on free market compensation offers creates an antitrust problem where none exists. So this goes back to point 1. A private association like MLSPIN cannot ban, or rather be compelled by the government to ban. Because remember, if you're acting on behalf of the government, you're basically the government. Remember that, like the whole concept relative to the social media companies banning free speech. Remember that? Home sellers from offering compensation to buyers, brokers in the free market. Again, amazing that the Biden administration is a champion of the free market. Yeah, supposedly. That is a blatant restraint of trade. Certainly MLSPIN. Certainly the MLSPIN is a champion of the free market here. That is a blatant restraint on free trade, much more severe than other MLS rules that have been struck down as anti-competitive. And then they cite this case, which I had never heard of. This is well before my time. But sometime back in the 80s, early 80s, up in Poughkeepsie in upstate New York, apparently one of the MLSs up there has this rule that you all had to use the same lawn sign. You all had to use the same lawn sign. I know. And in a notable example, an MLS was found to be in violation of the Sherman Trust Act because it required all members to use the same yard sign instead of branded signs of their respective agencies. And that got struck down. So using an MLS to control the speech of its members, once again, is a blatant restraint on free trade. And here we are here with the MLSPIN being a champion of free speech and free trade in the free market. We'll see how the Biden administration responds to this. Now, point number 4. The Department of Justice proposed ban. Now, this is I think the most important or the most interesting part. Let me tell you what this part is going to be about. This part here is a direct attack on the NAR settlement. This point here is a direct attack on the NAR settlement, which is what I've been saying for a long time. Is like, how can you have one set of rules in Massachusetts? Then you have the Bombshell Commission lawsuit settlement, which covers most of the country, although you're going to have some MLSs opt out, like Northwest MLS. Like, I don't get it. Let's just take the Northwest MLS first. If you are a realtor in the Northwest MLSPIN, excuse me, let me rephrase. If you're a realtor in the Northwest MLS, and the Northwest MLS has adopted basically the FU DOJ policy, how do you comply with the NAR settlement if you're a realtor in the Northwest MLS? Like, how do you do that? I don't know. So that's why I've been saying for a while that it seems to me that the money may have been settled in Kansas City, but the rules, I think, are being settled in Massachusetts. That's just since I'm not a lawyer, but that's just my hands. So this point here is the most intriguing one because it goes after the NAR settlement. It attacks the NAR settlement. The DOJ's proposed ban would remain flawed, even if it applied only to commission offers on the MLS. So, as you know, from the NAR settlement, you can cooperate with commissions, but you can't do it on the MLS. Remember that? You can't do it on the MLS. So, when getting back to, there we go there. So, let's continue. DOJ has made its position clear that if it wants seller offers of compensation removed from the market entirely, not just the MLS, but even if the DOJ walked back that extreme position, it would still go far beyond what is required to resolve this private litigation. MLSPIN is not NAR. It does not have the same rules, policies, or handbooks. Okay, all right. This is where they kind of went too far for me because, yes, MLSPIN is not NAR, but they basically do have the same policies. All right, so you're not snowing me on this one. You basically have the same policies, right? The MLSPIN is broker-owned. It's not realtor-owned, but it's controlled by realtors, if that makes any sense. And while it's not the same organization, basically the rules are the same. So you lost me on that one, MLSPIN. And it has already reached a settlement on this case long before NAR. That's true. This settlement involves one non-NAR affiliated MLS, which has not been found guilty of any wrongdoing. Because, usually in one of these settlements, you don't admit any wrongdoing. NAR's settlement involves scores of defendants facing billions of dollars of potential liabilities. Both settlements are practical compromises in different litigation and should be evaluated as such. The goal is not perfection. Well, that's just, whatever happens will not be perfection. Or to resolve disputed policy issues on a national basis. It is to achieve a fair and reasonable outcome based upon the facts of the case and the risks and burdens of advancing to a trial. It is not an antitrust conspiracy under any standard merely to publish compensation offers on the MLS. And that practice certainly does not constitute a conspiracy under the legal certainty standard that applies to the evaluation of this private settlement. So they're reminding the judge about what standard by which you have to judge this settlement. MLSPIN has the right of conduct, lawful business in Massachusetts to publish the speech of its members. The court should protect those rights and preserve MLSPIN's role in promoting efficiency and transparency in the Massachusetts real estate market by approving the proposed settlement. Wow. Get roasted, Department of Justice. Like, really? I got to say, I'm impressed. Whether or not the judge is impressed, that's a different question altogether. But MLSPIN, and being the champion of the free market here and free speech, they've made a compelling argument as far as I'm concerned. One that makes me kind of like pump the brakes a little bit, like on like what might happen next. Now I'm even less sure. And as I said, the number one thing I want is stability and clarity. But now I'm even less sure what's going to happen. And we have these, like, again, what if MLSPIN wins this case? What does that mean for realtors? It won't bother me. It actually might even, if MLSPIN wins this case and I'm not a realtor, right? That might put me in a competitive advantage in Massachusetts because I don't have to comply with the rules out of Kansas City. I just have to comply with the MLSPIN rules. So I could, non-realtors, I hate that phrase, by the way, people who are not suckered into joining the Realtor Association might have a advantage in Massachusetts, right? Because we don't have to comply with that BS coming out of Kansas. So, this is very interesting. Very, very interesting. If I was you, I would stay tuned. Let's see if we have any comments today. Sharon Kennedy from Good Morning. Good morning, Sharon. It's good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. Anybody else would like to have a question, pop right in. By the way, I'm putting the DOJ, the MLSPIN brief in the description. There's a Google Drive description or link in the description thingy. And by the way, we also just passed 3,400 subscribers. I saw that this morning. Thank you so much. I'm a little bit behind in my comments. I'll try to get to some comments today. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us. We do have one comment from Tim. Could you just summarize what you just read? I got here late. I would say in a nutshell, Tim, that MLSPIN, which is involved in a lawsuit here in Massachusetts, which is similar to the Bombshell Commission lawsuit out in Kansas City in terms of the rules. The dollar amount is much, much smaller, but the rules are very, very similar. MLSPIN has just responded to the Department of Justice with what I called a blistering response to the Department of Justice's letter, in this case, Statement of Interest, that the Department of Justice filed in February. And we're now 8-9 weeks from the deadline, August 17th. And we have no clarity here, at least in MLS-PIN land, which is the vast majority of Massachusetts. We have no clarity of what the new rules are going to be, or even if there are going to be new rules. Even though the Kansas City NAR settlement seems to be moving forward, how can that move forward if there's different rules in different places? So not being a lawyer, I'm confused. All right. Hopefully that answers your question, Tim, as best as I could. All right. So Real Estate News also has a story up about this. I imagine Inman will eventually catch up and they'll post something today, I guess. But thank you so much for joining us today. Hope that helped out. Tim has a follow-up question. Just getting new Texas forms here. By the way, Tim, what MLS are you a member of in Texas? I'm interested. And if you're a realtor in Texas, I'd be curious to know what local association you're a member of in Texas. Just try to, not that I'm keeping an official tab, but I know Austin made a statement about that. So I'm not sure if you're from Austin. And by the way, we have a good number of people that watch this channel from Texas. And thank you so much. I loved visiting Texas when I went in 2022, drove across the entire state of Texas, never spent a moment on the interstate, went west to east with a giant dive south all the way to Big Bend National Park, Eagle Pass, all the way through the Houston area, went through across Texas, never went on the interstate. Very, very interesting place. Tim says, great job. Thank you very much. And Arlington, Texas. All right. Way to go, Arlington. All right. Thank you. And thank you, Sharon. All right. So that wraps up today's episode. Have a great day. We'll try to keep you updated. Go make some money. Bye-bye.